My name is Courtney Gilbert. I'm the curator of visual arts here at the Sun Valley Center for the Arts. And the exhibition that we have up right now is called Role Play. Role play is one part of a larger big idea project about the kind of changing nature of the way we define gender in the United States today. We all seem to be shifting away from language that is strictly about male versus female toward a more flexible and fluid understanding of the way gender operates in our world. The exhibition features artwork by 8 contemporary artists. One of the artists whose work I think most gets at some of the ideas that we're pursuing is Angela Ellsworth. We have 2 sculptures from an ongoing project called seer bonnets, similar to the bonnets that would have been worn by Mormon pioneer women in the 19th century. These bonnets are made with seed pearl corsage pins. The Mormon Church didn't offer women a lot of flexibility in how they identified themselves, but they really transcend that context, and they're about how, for both men and women, our expectations of what their roles in society should be can be very constricting and literally uncomfortable. There are 2 bodies of photography in the exhibition that I selected because they are sort of in conversation with each other, despite having been made by 2 completely separate photographers. One is a series of 7 photographs from a larger project by a photographer named Jonah Frank. Jonah visited a number of boxing gyms in the UK. During a visit in 2010, a friend took her to a boxing gym outside of Liverpool, where she became kind of fascinated by the boys and young men who train there. It's a pastime that's handed down from generation to generation, and she's made a series of portraits of some of these boys and young men just as they're coming out of the boxing ring. And the portraits convey this deep vulnerability that they feel despite their love for this sport that I think we think of as, very traditionally masculine. I wanted to contrast Jonah Frank's photographs with a body of work by a photographer based in New Orleans whose name is Edna Lanieri. And for the last few years, Lanieri has been photographing women on the amateur boxing circuit in Texas, Louisiana, and in Florida. And what's amazing about these photographs is how these women really radiate so much strength and confidence as boxers in a way that I think defies our typical expectations of femininity. Judith Miller and Stan Schellebarger are a married couple who live in Chicago, and they each have their own independent artistic practices, but for a number of years they have been making work together. They often use techniques that we kind of typically think of as women's work, like crochet, silhouette, embroidery. So they're challenging how we understand what's women's work and what should be men's work. We have 3 photographs on display that document performances they have done crocheting a long pink tube that they've been working on together for a number of years. They've committed to working on it together until one of them dies. It's an ongoing project, and then the other one will unravel it as a symbol of their time together. Kenyatta A.C. Hinkle is a Los Angeles-based artist who has made a huge body of work exploring both her African heritage and her roots growing up in Kentucky. We have a number of works from a project she calls The Uninvited, where she took ethnographic photographs of women in Africa that were made at the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century. And they're images that, when they were made, were very exoticizing and primitivizing of women, sort of presenting them as objects to be gazed upon. What Hinkle has done is taken these photographs and covered these bodies that once would have been presented without clothes, covered them with collage and with paint and with beading works that kind of reclaim the images and give these women almost an armor against the world, reclaiming these stereotypes of African women and transforming them into something new. Nathan Vincent is an artist based in New York who works with what he calls feminine processes, things like knitting and crochet, sewing and embroidery. And on display here we have a series of doilies, more than life-size, with images of bodybuilders. As a child, he had an uncle who was a bodybuilder. His uncle seemed the epitome of masculinity, the image of strength that bodybuilders project to the world. And as an adult, he's really interested in how people like bodybuilders really work to craft a very masculine, strong persona that they project to the world and that they then allow themselves to be judged upon. Sort of taking your personal persona, opening it up to the world. In contrast with the world of bodybuilding, where you take your private self and put it on display and make it very public, we also have a set of 6 hand-knitted and crocheted urinals. The urinals get at that sense of vulnerability and exposure that men and women can sometimes feel in spaces that everyone should be able to be themselves, but instead can be very uncomfortable. Lindsay Morris is a photographer who for a number of years has made photographs at a summer camp in upstate New York for children who are gender creative and for their families. One of the things that I love about the photographs is that they include children who are questioning their gender alongside their totally gender-conforming siblings. Every child is just a child. You don't know who's who and what's what. The title of the book that Morris has published is called You Are You. And I think that title is at the heart of this entire project, which is really about creating a conversation where everybody has the opportunity to present their own understanding and definition of gender as it operates in their lives. I hope everybody will come in and see the exhibition. The artwork is accessible, it's engaging, it's really beautiful and thought-provoking.